Welcome back, guys, to the Ultimative Tearlament guide. This video will be separated into two parts. In the first part here I will look at my current deck list with you and explain to you what every Tearlament card does, and also give you some tips, some important things to know when it comes to the specific cards. And we also will talk about some like easy combos that you can do, or things that you have to keep in mind. Then in the second part, which will also be in this video, I will look at some test hands with you, and I will show you how you can optimally play these test hands to get the most out of the deck. The first thing that you need to understand is this is not a simple combo deck. This is more of a control deck that uses its own resources, shuffles them back, and basically grinds your opponent out over time. Of course, you can kill them in one turn. That is totally possible, but this is not like Math Mech or something where you basically build one board, interrupt your opponent, and then go for a kill on the next turn. Though, as I already said, you can do it with this deck. This is also a very complicated deck with a lot of chains. You need to switch on your chain building mechanism. So in your options you can select if chains are like building automatically, or you can do it manually. You definitely want to do it manually because there are a lot of things that you want to chain block, and there are a lot of important chains that you need to control in the right way, but we will look at this later on in the video. Let's just start right in, and we will of course only go over like the relevant cards. I will not talk about Maxi or Impermanence because you should know these cards, and these are not the important Tearlament core cards here. Let's start with DD Crow. This is just, it's not a Tearlament card of course, but it's a good hand trap that can remove the Tearlament fusion monsters, which are Merly, Sharon and Halfness, from the graveyard when they activate their fusion effect, and then the fusion summon is no longer possible. Which is also important is that right now we do not have the Bestials. The Bestials basically have the same job. They also can remove these guys from the graveyard, so they cannot fusion summon, and then they are really strong bodies on the board. So this goes to the graveyard, and the Bestials will go to the field and be strong bodies there. The DD Crow is also very important because this is a dark monster, and we have the Mud Dragon of the Swamp, and we can only make this with two monsters with the same attribute but different types. So dark here, different type, Winged Beast, and we have all the fusion summon monsters, and these are all dark. And every time that you make a fusion summon with one of these monsters, you need to use the fusion summon monster that activated this effect for the fusion summon. So activating Merly to fuse, you will need to use at least Merly and put it back on the bottom of your deck. And then you can, for example, use the DD Crow to get your Mud Dragon of the Swamp, which can protect your other monsters, but is also important because it's a level 4 monsters, and with your level 4 monster you can make your strongest XYZ plays, which are the Abyss Dweller, the Time Thief Redoer, your Baguska, or your number 60 Dugaris. But we will come to that in a moment. So this is the role of DD Crow. This is an interruption to interrupt your opponent's Tearlament play. And that is one of the most important things to understand. There are a lot of cards that are not useful if you are in like silver or gold, because I was yesterday with my friends and they play in silver and gold, and there were basically no Tearlament decks, so you would not necessarily run the DD Crow there, and you would not like primarily make the Abyss Dweller, which we'll come to in a second, because this is one of, well, the most important card in the mirror match. But if you are not seeing a lot of Tearlament matches, you would not go for this. You would maybe then go for the Time Thief Redoer. I right now am in, don't let me lie, Diamond 4 or 3, and I only play Tearlament mirrors, so that is important to know. So this is the DD Crow. We have the Herald of the Orange Light, which is a negate, and it needs to, via quick effect, send one card, one fairy monster from your hand to the grave. This is cool because this is a negate, as I already said, but this is also able to get your shufflers or your millers in the graveyard. These are the millers, which can mill 5 when they hit the graveyard. These are the shufflers, which when they are in the graveyard or on your field, you can, per quick effect, shuffle 3 cards, up to 3 cards, back in either your opponent's deck or your own deck, but we will come to this in a moment. So that's the role of this card. Then we have Diviner of the Herald. You can normal summon this or special summon this. This is one of your normal summons that you can do to start your plays. When this is normal summoned, you can send one fairy monster from your deck to the graveyard. This once again can trigger your millers or can get your shufflers into grave. And then the level of this monster becomes plus the level of the monster that was sent. So these are level 4 monsters, this is level 2, this becomes level 6 then, and is also a tuner monster, as you can see here. This is the reason why we are running Baron de Fleur, because with this and another level 4 monster, these are all level 4 monsters, Rhinoheart is a level 4 monster, and Sharon is a level 4 monster. So you can then go and make a Baron de Fleur, which is quite strong, and a good Omni negate. But more to Baron in a second. So then we come to the fusion monsters, Merly, Harkness, and Sha'iren. So these 3 monsters here, you basically have to understand that in each turn, your turn and your opponent's turn, you basically have 3 fusion summons available to you that you can potentially do. And here are your fusion monsters. Just quick, but we'll go deeper in a moment. What you basically want to do, you want to at first make your kit colors, which when it is your first turn, you would then go into your rule colors most of the time, and then you possibly have a 3rd fusion summon if you can manage it. You could go into your Mud Dragon then to have a level 4 monster, maybe make the Abyss Dweller together with the Rhinoheart, because these are both level 4, maybe make a Time Thief Redoer, but we will come to this in a moment. So these cards are your fusion monsters. And every one of them has a special effect. So Merly has the effect, if this card is normal or special summoned, you can send the top 3 cards of your deck to the graveyard. And then this also has the fusion mechanic when it hits the grave. This is important because this you could normal summon to get your play started, because this mills free only for you. This is very important, especially when we come to the millers here that mill also for your opponent, but more to that in a moment. Then we have Harkness, which is also pretty good. Harkness has a quick effect in which it can chain to an activated monster effect on the field and then summon itself on the field and then also mill 3 cards into the grave. This is always the case with every one of these cards and their special effects. And then of course, if it hits the graveyard via card effect, very important, the Tearlament effects are via card effect, so battling over this or killing the Harkness and then it goes to grave does not trigger the fusion summon. And then we have the Sha'iren, which during your main phase you can special summon this card from your hand, and if you do, send 1 monster from your hand to the graveyard and then again send the top 3 cards of your deck to the grave. And once again, when this hits the grave via effect, then it can fusion summon, okay? So this is particularly good because you can basically send the Ishizu cards to grave, because now you need to send something to grave here via the effect. You could send other Tearlament cards into grave, therefore they can fusion summon then. You could send Rhinoheart, you could send your Shufflers, you could send your Millers, so this is a pretty strong card which can enable a lot of plays. Important thing to know, every one of these 3 fusion monsters will put, so you need to use the fusion monster you activated and then other cards from your graveyard, your hand and or your field. So what you basically want to do, you want to use your graveyard first, then you want to use your hand and you want to use your field last. This of course depends on the situation, but you want to keep your your field resources. For example, let's say you have a Rhinoheart on the field. This is level 4 and this is important because you can go into your extra deck monsters with this. If you fuse it away, then it's gone. If you have it in hand, then better use the hand Rhinoheart if you have also a Rhinoheart in hand, for example. But we will look at this with the test hands in more depth. And then you will put the 2 cards or the maybe 3 cards that you used for the fusion summon on the bottom of your deck and don't shuffle the deck. This is important in a moment. Then we have Rhinoheart, the 4th Tearlament card. This, when a normal or special summoned, so normal or special summon works both, will send 1 Tearlament monster from your deck to your graveyard. So this is basically a 1 card combo to start your plays, because you could play Rhinoheart, then get any of these into the graveyard, and then they could start your fusion plays. What you can do is just play the Rhinoheart normal summon, put for example Merly into the grave, and then you can go into your first important play in the match with Kid Carlos. You could then make Kid Carlos with your Merly and also your Rhinoheart that you used, normal summoned or special summoned, and then you have your Kid Carlos, and then you can continue from there. Rhinoheart also has the effect, if it is going to the graveyard via card effect, then you can special summon this to the field, and then you have to discard one of your Tearlament cards from your hand into the graveyard. So it's a bit like Shiren in the case that if this is special summoned, this is also special summoned via its own effect, you then have to discard a Tearlament name from, or a Tearlament card from your hand to the grave. Note that this needs a Tearlament discard, and this can discard also your Ishizu cards. So with this you can, for example, special summon it to field and then via the effect put another of your fusion summons into the grave, and then they can fusion summon from there. Then these cards, I guess you already know, we have the Shufflebacks and the Millers. One important thing to note is that this, or a few of these, have important effects that can be quite good besides the shuffling and the milling. So this you can activate, and then you can discard one other Earth Fairy monster and special summon this from your hand to the field. And then you can also add one of the other Ishizu cards to hand. So let's imagine you have this on your hand and then one of these, Agido or Kelbeck, the Millers. So you can special summon this to field. This is level 4, so this enables these plays here in the extra deck. And then you can just discard, for example, your Agido. This mills you 5, and you can also get a Kelbeck or a Mudora to hand via this effect. Pretty strong, so it's always important to not only see this as the Millers and the Shufflers, they also have bonus effects. The Mudora can discard one other fairy monster, special summon this card from the hand, and then you can place one Gravekeeper step from your deck face up in your spell and trap zone. This you cannot activate because we don't play these in the deck. Then we have the Kelbeck, also very important. It's quite complicated, but it's a very strong effect. If a card is sent from the hand or deck to your opponent's graveyard, so this obviously happens when your opponent plays Tearlaments. They send, for example, a Merly into the graveyard. Then you can activate this, special summon this from your hand, target one special summon monster, one special summon this card from your hand. You can return one monster on your opponent's field to the deck or the extra deck to the hand, right? To the hand, sorry. So a normal monster would go to the hand, and an extra deck monster would go back into the extra deck. So this is important. Let's say, for example, your opponent goes first, Tearlament, you are going second, and they get Rule Colors on the field. Then you could special summon, and then they mill something, Tearlament name into the grave. Then you can special summon this, send the Rule Colors back into the extra deck, given that the Rule Colors does not activate his effect. And then you would have a level 4 body on the field. It's the first turn, so he cannot kill it via battle. And next turn you can maybe make an Abyss Dweller at the start of the turn and be golden. And then we have Agido. This is also quite strong because same effect. If a card is sent from the hand or deck to your opponent's graveyard, same as Kelbeck. You can then special summon this card from your hand, and then you can special summon one of these guys here, or one of the other guys, also itself, from the graveyard. So this would allow you to put one level 4 body on the field and special summon another level 4 body on the field from the graveyard. So then you would be able to go into these plays, for example. And note also that if you, for example, get Mudora or Keldo to the field, they can also, via quick effect, activate their effects from the field, so they don't need to be in the graveyard. Then we have Terraforming. This searches our field spell. Then we have Instant Fusion, which is super important. The targets are your Mud Dragon and your Kit Colors. So this is a 1-card combo to get into your Kit Colors. I already talked about that you can go with Rhino Heart, just pitch one of the Tearlament names and then fuse with these into the Kit Colors and then continue in your plays. This is not optimal. We will look at this in a second. But you can also just use your Instant Fusion, go into your Kit Colors and continue your plays from there. It's important to note that the extra deck monster you summoned here will leave the field at the end of the turn. So this is a mistake I made in the beginning. I made this to attack and then the turn ended and it was gone. Also important to note is that they cannot attack when you summon them via Instant Fusion. This was a mistake I also made. So always keep in mind that they will leave the field in the end turn and you cannot attack with them. So use them for something. This you can use for one of your XYZ's monsters because it's level 4, and Kit Colors you will most likely get to the grave via its own effect, but we will come to this in a moment. Then we have Triple Tactics Talents. This is good because every Tearlament deck activates things in your main phase, so you can always activate this. Then we have the Field Spell Pearl Rhino. So when this is activated, you can add one Tearlaments monster to your hand, which is pretty good. And every Tearlaments and Fusion monster on your field gets 500 attack. This is really good because if you have the Field Spell, your opponent doesn't have it, and they also play Tearlaments, then of course you can run over their Tearlament cards with yours. And as you can see here, the Tearlament names, most of them have a very high attack stat, 1-5, 1-8. So this is crazy, because this becomes 2-3 with the field spell, which is like, this is a normal summon, level 4. And the other effect is, which is quite important and leads to a lot of combos, is that once per turn, when a Tearlament, a monster, is shuffled back into the deck or extra deck, you can then target one card on the field and destroy it. And this you can do with your own cards, but more to that in a moment. Then we have Scream, a super important card, continuous spell. If a monster is normal or special summoned while you control a Tearlament monster, that's important. But keep in mind, this will trigger, let's say you play the Tearlament Scream and then normal summon the Rhino Heart. Then this can already trigger because this is on field, so that fulfills the requirement. Then only you can mill 3 cards to the graveyard. This is so important to understand, that your Tearlament cards like Kid Kalos or the Scream or your fusion monsters will only mill for you, while these two here will mill for also the enemy. And I think when you are starting with Tearlaments, you will feel obliged to always activate these against every opponent, but you are also activating your opponent's play. So you always have to keep in mind what you are doing. You always have to check your graveyard if you already have your shufflers in the graveyard, so you can counter your opponent's plays, but we will look at this in a moment. So this is Scream. And then also, if this effect activates, this is also quite important, your opponent monsters lose 500 attack for the rest of this turn. Very important. And if this card goes to the graveyard, you can then search a Tearlament trap, then these here, Saliak, we are playing. So basically every Tearlament card, when it goes to the graveyard, does something and goes plus for you. Then we have Caught by the Grave. Obviously you can Caught by the Grave the Maxi, Caught by the Grave the Tearlament names of your opponent, cross out Designator, same thing, cross out the Maxi, cross out your opponent's names, because you're also playing them. Infinite Impermanence is really good. The main target would be the Kid Kalos, because the Kid Kalos basically is the extender of the deck. If you can impermanence your opponent's Kid Kalos, that's quite strong. And then we have the Tearlament Suliak. This is a continuous trap, by the way, so you can activate it every turn. If you control a Tearlaments monster, you can target one effect monster your opponent controls and negates its effect. That's good. And then there comes the really good part, as you could say. And then send one monster you control to the graveyard. So this send one monster you control to the graveyard is the effect of this card. So if you, for example, have a Merly on the board and you use this and send the Merly to grave, then this was sent via card effect to the grave. So its fusion summon effect will trigger. So sending the Merly via the trap will lead to you being able to fusion summon in the grave. This obviously is also right for the Halfness or the Sharon. And obviously is also right for the Scream, if you would use the Scream and get the Scream to the graveyard, which you could already do. Yeah, you could also send the Scream to grave. And then this has the bonus effect: when this hits the grave, then you can search a Tearlament monster and add it to your hand. So pretty strong stuff. It's not only good to mill these cards and the fusion cards, you can also profit and get a plus from milling your spells and traps. So let's come to the extra deck. We have the Muttering of the Swamp. I already talked about this. This can protect your water or dark monsters. Obviously this can also change into light, but your main types are water and dark. Your opponent cannot target this card or monsters on the field with the same attribute, water or dark, with card effects, and once per turn quick effect you can declare one attribute, so you can once per turn via quick effect change this to a dark monster, and this will then protect your dark monsters. Also, as I already said, this is a level 4 which you need for your XYZ plays. Then we have the core card of the deck, which is Kid Kalos. It's limited to 1. This is not a problem because you basically only need 1. You can make this via 1 Tearlament monster and 1 Aqua monster. This is pretty much like every card that you will mill can make the Kid Kalos. This is your starter. This you want to make first. That's why we have the instant fusion right here. And then if this card is special summoned, you can take 1 Tearlament card from your deck and either add it to your hand or put it into the graveyard. So note here, this is the only card that can search you everything. It can also search your traps and your Scream. And you want to search your traps because you want on your end board your trap. There's also a cool combo that you can do with Kid Kalos, where you search your Merly and then are basically able to mill 8, but only for you, which is quite strong. So you can also put it, as the text says, to the graveyard. So if you wanted to, you could also say, okay, I will put like the Trap or the Merly, Halfness, Rhinoheart, Sharon, whoever, to the graveyard, so their fusion effect or their Rhinoheart effect will activate. So you can do a lot with this card, and you always have to think about what you want to do with it in the current situation. And then there's the other effect, which is like the strong effect. I think that's the reason why this card got banned in TCG and OCG. You can target one monster you control. You will most likely target Kid Carlos herself, and then you can special summon one Tearlament monster from your hand or graveyard. Note here, you can also special summon your fusion monsters when they are in the grave, and special summon it to the field. And then the targeted card will go to the graveyard. This is also via card effect. Remember, everything here in Tearlament needs to happen via card effect. So this triggers, and if this card is sent to the graveyard by card effect, it says here on the card, you can send the top 5 cards of your deck to the grave. So you're basically making the Kid Carlos, and then you search something, for example, the Merly or your Trap, depending on your hand. Let's say you search your Merly, get it to the hand, then you activate the Kid Carlos, target itself, then you special summon the Merly. Merly on special summon will send the top 3 cards of your deck to the grave, and then because this was sent to the grave via card effect, will mill another 5. So these two together are basically mill 8 only for you, which is strong and enables a lot of other plays. That is Kid Carlos. And the reason why you only need one is, of course, the next play you would most likely make, if it's your first turn, you would go into Roll Carlos, and Roll Carlos needs Kid Carlos and one Tearlament monster. So for example, you would use your Merly in the grave to fuse Roll Carlos, would use your Merly and your Kid Carlos to make Roll Carlos, and then Kid Carlos would go back into the extra deck, so you have it there for the next play. Then we have Predator Plant Dragostapelia, which is a negate per quick effect. You can make this on your opponent's turn. Note that you need a fusion monster for this, so let's say your end board is Roll Carlos. Then in a perfect world, you want to use Roll Carlos effect, which is once per turn, and then when it used its effect, you can then think about when you get a fusion summon on your opponent's turn to make Dragostapelia with the Roll Carlos, because it needs a fusion summon monster, a fusion monster. And then you have basically another effect life, another negate life. So you will mainly make this on your opponent's turn, but of course that depends on the situation. Then we have the Roll Carlos, which is, as I already said, basically the second thing you go into with your second fusion. Remember, you have 3 fusion summons each turn. The first will most likely be Kid Carlos. Depends on the situation. This is more if you go first, and the other one, Kaleidoheart, is more if you are going second and need to, for example, break a board or react to your opponent's plays. So other Aqua monsters you control cannot be destroyed by battle. That's already quite strong. And then, of course, effect can only be used once per turn. When your opponent activates a card effect that includes an effect that special summons a monster or monsters, you can quick effect negate the activation, destroy the card, and then send one Tearlament card from your hand or face-up field to the graveyard. So, for example, this protects you from Nibiru. So if you are able to make this early in the turn, you're basically protected from Nibiru, though I think in the higher ranks like Diamond and Platinum, you will not see Nibiru that often because everyone is playing Tearlament and nobody is playing Nibiru in Tearlament. So you can, and this is important to understand, you can also negate your opponent's fusion plays, because let's say your opponent mills a Merly and tries to fusion summon from the grave, you then can activate your Roll Carlos, because this would special summon a monster. You then negate your the opponent's Merly, and then you need to send one Tearlament card from your hand or face up to the field, which, once again, you can see the synergy here. Let's say you have a Chiron in hand or one of the other fusion monsters, or your Rhinoheart, doesn't matter. You then send this to grave, and then also the graveyard effect will activate and you can then fusion summon. Or you send your, I don't know, Halfness that you have on the field to the grave, which then hits the grave, and you can again fusion summon on your opponent's turn. So that is what a Roll Carlos does. The other thing is, if this fusion summon monster or card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can special summon this card. And this does not leave the field or gets banished after that. You can do this basically every turn. So let's say you need to, or you activate your Saliek to negate, and then you, of course, need to send one monster you control to the graveyard. Let's say you do not have a Tearlament monster which will trigger in the graveyard, then you could just send your Roll Carlos it goes then via card effect to the graveyard, and then you can just special summon it again. So that's pretty crazy. Then we have Tearlament's Kaleido Heart, which, as I already said, is more of a card that you will use on your opponent's turn if your opponent has cards on the field. So this itself cannot be used as fusion material. This is important to note. It needs Tearlament Rhino Heart plus 2 other Aqua monsters. And if this card is special summoned, or if an Aqua monster is sent to your graveyard by card effect, while this card is on the field, now this is this line here, or if an Aqua monster is sent to your graveyard by card effect, obviously means if you mill one of your Tearlament cards to the grave, and this activates also, or if this is special summoned, you can target one card your opponent controls and shuffle it into the deck. Super strong. It is not only shuffle a monster back, you can also shuffle maybe their planet back or another important back row card, can shuffle it back, and shuffling it back into the deck is obviously stronger than putting it back into your opponent's hand. And if this card is sent to the graveyard by card effect, remember all of this stuff, this is by card effect, this here would be by card effect, so you can destroy, for example, your own Kaleido Heart, and that would count as by card effect. If this card is sent to the graveyard by card effect, you can special summon this card, and if you do, send one Tearlament card from your deck to the graveyard. So this is basically the Rhino Heart effect here. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can send one Tearlament monster from your deck to the graveyard, and this would allow you to make fusion plays. Also, this can also allow you to make fusion plays. So there is a situation in which you have your planet on your field and you have your Kaleido Heart on your field, and what you could then do is you activate the planet's effect. You can target one card on the field, destroy it. You can target your own Kaleido Heart. It will get destroyed, go to the graveyard, and then you can special summon it again. You have it on board again. And note here that if you special summon it again and you have not already used it, this effect will also trigger. If this card is special summoned, you can then send one card your opponent controls into the deck. So this also activates the special summoned effect again. And then you can basically use the Rhino Heart effect and put one of your, let's say, Tearlament fusion monsters to the graveyard, and you can fusion summon again. So really crazy, and that's also a thing you have to keep in mind. One thing to mention with the Pearl Rhino, if you want to use this effect, you can target one card on the field, destroy it. This is activated if you shuffle your Tearlament monsters back into your deck. This of course happens if you do a fusion summon from the graveyard, but you can also activate this via your shufflers. So your Keldo and Modora can shuffle, of course, your Tearlament cards back into the deck. So if you have a shuffler in your grave and you want to activate this to maybe pop this and activate its effect, or maybe pop something on your opponent's board, you can just activate your shufflers in the grave, shuffle one of your Tearlament names back, at least one, and then this would already activate. So you can activate your own field spell, which is quite strong. Then we have the Baron, nothing to say here, you can make it with this, I already talked about this. Then we have one of the most important cards in this deck, the Abyss Dweller. So as I already said, if you are playing in the lower ranks and you do not see a lot of Tearlaments, you do not need to auto-make this on turn 1. But if you are, like me, playing in Diamond or maybe Platinum and you only see Tearlaments, this is one of the most important cards. You make this with 2 level 4 monsters, as I already said, Rhino Heart, these guys, Shiren, all level 4. And then, while this card has material attached that was originally water, all water monsters control gain 500 attack. This can be important, but the most important thing is this. Once per turn quick effect, you can detach raw material from this card, and your opponent cannot activate any card effects in the graveyard this turn. So this basically locks your opponent out from using their graveyard. They can still mill something into the graveyard, but they cannot activate anything. It's important to note, and it's noted here by the semicolon you can see here, you can detach one material from this card. This here says to you that this, the thing that stands before the semicolon, that means this is cost. This is not the effect. So, for example, and we will come to this in a moment, the Time Thief Redoer has the effect that you can detach up to 3 different types of materials from this card, blah blah blah, and then you can activate this effect. Note here that there's no semicolon here. So this detaching from the Time Thief Redoer, this is card effect, not cost, while this is cost, and you can see this by the semicolon here. That's very important, because also you can always, let's say this is negated, okay? You can then still activate this, pay the cost, but the effect won't go through. So cost you can always activate, but that's not the important point. The important point is that if you detach one material from this card, let's say you have like a Merly under this card and you detach the Merly and it gets to graveyard, the Merly will not activate in the graveyard because this is cost and not card effect. And Merly needs to go to the graveyard via card effect. So that's important to note because it will be important in a moment when you come to the Time Thief redoer. So what you basically can do is you can make an Abyss Dweller early if you know you're playing its Tearlaments, or if you are in the higher ranks, and then you just activate its effect, and then you can safely use these cards here. So then you can safely mill 5, your opponent mills 5, it doesn't matter, they cannot play, they cannot activate it. And then, because this is 2 materials, you can then on your opponent's turn in his draw phase once again activate this, or maybe wait a second to activate it, and then on his turn he can also not use his graveyard. That's why this is super strong. One thing to keep in mind here is, if your graveyard is set up good, that means if you have already, like, let's say 1 Keldo and 1 Mudora in your graveyard, then it's not super important to make the Abyss Dweller, because if you can shuffle back your opponent's Tearlament fusions when they hit the graveyard, then this also works. You don't need the Abyss Dweller then, so always check your graveyard and your opponent's graveyard for what is in there, because both of them can basically, let's say for example your opponent mills 3 cards, and let's say they mill the Merly, the Hafnis and the Sharon. Of course they do not want to activate 3 of them at the same time, wouldn't make any sense, but what you can simply do then is activate, let's say you have a Mudora in the grave, and shuffle every Tearlament card back into the deck, so they can activate nothing. You can also shuffle your opponent's shufflers back into the deck, so they cannot shuffle your Tearlament names back into the deck, but more to that in a moment. So this is the reason why we have a Abyss Dweller. Baguska you can also make with 2 level 4 monsters. This is just if, let's say your opponent Abyss Dwellers you and you don't have any plays, you can then go into Baguska, everything will go into defense mode, the effects will be negated, and then you can basically wait until you can play again, until you have a better hand. So this is just defense to buy you some time if you have nothing to do. And then we have another important card, Time Thief Redoer. And I think this is the most important card to make if you are not playing against Tearlaments all the time. If you play against Tearlaments all the time, this is the best card to make when it comes to XYZs. Other than that, it's Time Thief Redoer. So it's also made with 2 level 4 monsters. Once per turn during the standby phase, you can attach the top cards of your opponent's deck to this card as a material. And then now comes the important part. Quick effect. You can detach up to 3 materials, different types of materials from this card, and then you can apply one of the effects. So you will make this with monsters, so normally you will activate this effect, but maybe if you activate it in the standby phase and get the top card of your opponent's deck, you can also get a spell card or a trap card. If you detach a spell card, then you can draw 1 card. If you detach a trap card, you can place 1 face-up card your opponent controls on the top of the deck, which is super strong. But the main reason we want to play this is, let's for example say we make this with a Rhino Heart and a Sharon. Both of them are level 4. And now we want to, let's say we're in our opponent's turn, we pass over to our opponent. What we can do now is activate this at any point because it's quick effect. Then the Sharon and the Rhino Heart go to the grave, and because the detaching is part of the effect, as I explained to you a moment ago, these will trigger in the graveyard. So with Abyss Dweller, detaching will not trigger. With the Time Thief, these will trigger. So your Sharon and your Rhino Heart will trigger, which allows you to make plays on your opponent's turn, or basically start your plays on your opponent's turn. This is basically, you put your Tearlaments under this, and then you can activate them in your opponent's turn by detaching them. Note here that this is part of the effect. If you detach monsters, this will banish until the end phase. So this is gone from the field and then will come back, but that's not the important part. The important part is that you can activate your Tearlament names. Note here that you can also use this to activate plays on your turn. So let's say you have this Sharon on the field that you cannot get to graveyard. It's on the field, you can't get it to graveyard. Then you could make your Time Thief Redoer and activate it on your turn. So this would then go into the graveyard and you would be able to fusion summon if you want to use it on your turn. But that's the main reason why we play the Redoer and why it's such a strong card. You play a lot against Tearlaments, make this. You don't play a lot against Tearlaments, make this. Also, always check your graveyard for your shufflers. If you have a lot in the graveyard already, maybe you don't need your Abyss Dweller right now. Number 60 is not that important of a card. You can also make this with 2 level 4 monsters, and then again here, this is part of the effect, so it triggers. You can detach, or triggers not here, sorry, this doesn't trigger. This is cost, as you can see with the semicolon here. You can detach two materials and then activate one of these effects. What you will activate is skip your next draw phase, also draw two cards, then discard one card. This discard one card here is effect. So you will draw two cards and then you can discard one, and then you can discard your Chiron, Merly, Rhino Heart, your Ishizu Millers, whatever, and because it's part of the effect, yeah, this is semicolon, this is cost, this is the effect, it's part of the effect, everything here will trigger then. That's important to note. So this is basically, if you don't have plays, you can make this, draw two cards and pitch one card from your hand to the graveyard, and then the cards can activate it. Note here that the Ishizu cards, if this card is sent from the hand or deck to the graveyard, this can also happen via cost. So this does not need to happen via card effect. So for example, detaching the Agido from your Abyss Dweller would then activate your Agido engrave if you want to. But your Tearlament names, you need your Redoer or you need your number 60, okay? Then we have Zeus, pretty self-explanatory. Then we have Dark, you can revive your opponent's Tearlament names, for example the Chiron, which is Dark and level 4. So let's say you revive this and then you can maybe have another level 4, go into Abyss Dweller, whatever. Then we have Elf, this is also pretty important. You need two monsters including a level 2 monster. That could be your Merly, could also be your Diviner if you don't activate the effect. What else do we have? You could activate the, you could use the Herald. Yeah, there are a lot of cards, or maybe you steal something from your opponent's graveyard via the Dark. And the good thing about Elf, and this is a cool combo, if your Diviner was milled into the grave, you can then go for the Elf and revive this, and because this was special summoned, that is, the effect is then activated. You can then put one of your Ishizu cards into the graveyard, maybe mill 5, and then again start your plays. And of course also this protects the monsters who this points to, so you can protect your Rulkalos or maybe your Dragostapelia, whatever. Other important thing to note is that on your opponent's turn you can use this to revive the Diviner, then this effect will trigger. You can then get your Ishizu cards into the grave and start your milling on your opponent's turn. Or you could activate the Elf to revive your Merly, which is level 2, and when she is special summoned, she will mill 3 cards. So this basically allows you to start your plays in your opponent's turn. Then we have Unicorn, you can definitely switch this for another card, and we have Underworld Goddess of the Close Worlds, which these are very like normal cards. So that's the first part. I wanted to go over every card, and now we will draw some test hands against the bot, and I will show you how you can play from every situation. So guys, let's look at our first test hand. What do we have here? There are a few lines we can go, or it's basically 2 lines we can use here. You can normal summon the Rhino Heart, pitch something to the grave, and then fusion summon into Kid Kalos, or you can use Mudora's effect to get the Agido to the grave and then mill 5. If I would not know what I am playing against, so if I'm in the higher tiers and there's a lot of Tearlaments, I would basically not go for this play, because I would also mill 5 from my opponent. I would go then for the safer play, use the Rhino Heart here, pitch maybe like the Halfness, and then I can go fusion summon into the Kid Kalos here. But let's just use this play for the fun. We activate the Mudora because this is also good. We get a special summon level 4 body to the field. This goes to the grave, and now we can mill 5. As I already said, if you are playing against a lot of Tearlament decks, this is really dangerous. Let's see what we milled here. And as you can see, we have milled another Agido, which is pretty bad, but have not milled something else. So basically, this ends our play here. We can now normal summon the Rhino Heart and we'll go for the play that I mentioned to get into our Kid Kalos. So let's drop the Halfness here, and Halfness engrave will activate now, and now we can do our first fusion summon. We don't want to activate something. Let's go into Kid Kalos with the Halfness, with the Merly and the Rhino Heart, sorry. And there is our Kid Kalos. Kid Kalos will now on summon search us any Tearlament card either to grave or to hand, and if you didn't need it, but we need it now, you could then go for your Scream or your Sulliak. You optimally want to have your grave on your end bot and also your Scream, because your Scream, if you have it here and control a Tearlament monster, when your opponent normal or special summons, the top 3 card of your deck will go to the graveyard. So this is a way to start your plays on your opponent's turn. But I will show you now the mill 8 combo. So you select Merly here, add the Merly to hand? Yes, that we want to do. So we have used the Halfness already, and now we will use the Merly. So you activate the Kit Colors effect, target itself. You now can special summon the Merly. And now this goes to grave. So this is basically mill 8 now. One important thing to note here is you want to activate this first and this second. Why is that? Especially against Tearlaments. If he has Tearlament's Halfness, which he can quick effect chain to an activated effect on the field, and then he would summon his Halfness, special summon, and the Halfness would mill free. So this would be a way, if he's also Tearlament, to start his plays on our turn. This is dangerous. So what you can do here is you activate this first and activate Kit Colors second. So then, because he needs to chain this directly to the effect on the field, but this is a graveyard effect, so the effect on the field is chain link 1. He basically now needs to chain his Halfness, but he can't because we still have the Kit Colors, chain this 2, and now he cannot chain his Halfness to this. We will let this resolve mill 8 only for us. That's so important to know. We will mill 8. And I would advise you to always look at your opponent's graveyard, what he mills, and also at yours. Not only look at this and say like, oh, I can activate these effects, also look what you have milled. Because now we have milled a Keldo, this means we have protection against everything that happens in our opponent's grave. And we have also milled Mudora. So we have a Mudora and a Keldo in grave. That means that even if you are playing against Tearlaments now, you can then basically safely go to mill 5 if you need it with one of the Ishizu millers. Because even if then he hits a Tearlament name, you can use a Keldo or you can use a Mudora to shuffle it back. So in an optimal world, you basically want to end up with your graveyard looking like you have at least one Mudora and at least one Keldo going into your opponent's turn to protect you against your opponent's plays. And this is what I'm talking about. Now you basically, let's assume this is Tearlament. Now you basically don't need to make an Abyss Dweller, this card here, to stop your opponent's graveyard plays. You can, you can do it to be more safe, but you have your Keldo and you have your Mudora, which can protect you next turn when he's also playing Tearlament. So back to the topic, we have milled this Scream, which will get us a trap card, this one by the way, and we have milled the trap card, which will get us a monster. So which way around doesn't really matter here. Let's start with the Scream and then go second the Soliak. Obviously, you want to chain block the effect that is more important to you. So if you want a monster, then chain block the monster effect, and if you want the trap card, then chain block the other effect. So we will add. So we have used our Merly here. We've used our Halfness. So we could activate our Sharon if we get it into the graveyard and fuse with that. Problem is, Sharon we cannot special summon because we need to drop a card from the hand, a monster from the hand, and we have none. We have still, we have not our normal summon left, so we can basically not really work with the Chiron here. What we could do is, because we also get the trap here into the hand from the Scream, we could drop the trap to special summon the Chiron, but I want the trap for my end board. So what I will do here now is I will take the Halfness to the hand. This I can activate in the opponent's turn to mill 3 and then go into my place, and now I will get for the Soliak. I have the Soliak now, and we have our grave set up like this. We have our Mudora, and let's see what we can do here. So basically you can do go into Dark, which if your opponent also has Tearlaments, you can maybe get one of his Tearlaments level 4 monsters, or we can go into Elf. Elf would be awesome if we had the Diviner in the grave, which we have not, or if we would have a Merly in the grave, which also we haven't because this is still on the field. But of course, you could just go and make your Elf, then your Merly would go to the graveyard, and next turn, in your opponent's turn, you can special summon the Merly back and also mill 3. What we can do here now is that we can use our Fairy Tale Snow. Let's see if that makes sense, if we can banish a lot of cards that are not that important, which we can. So why am I using the Fairy Tale Snow now? This is level 4 monster, so with this together, we can make, for example, the Abyss Dweller to protect us against the Tearlament plays from our opponent next turn. So this is basically extension at this point that we have here. So let's do this. We will banish this. Oh no, this is hand, sorry. We will banish Terraforming, we don't need it. We can banish this, we can banish this, the Instant Fusion, and one of the Millers. So banish this, special summon this to field as an extension. We do not want to activate this effect, it doesn't activate. either. So now we have the opportunity to go into our rank 4 place. So this is basically where you need to make a decision. We could also go for this, draw another 2 and then get the halfness to the graveyard to fusion summon. Would be more of a crazy play. You can also do this if you know that you're playing against Tearlaments. I would advise to go into the Abyss Dweller. This doesn't make a lot of sense because you want to have your Tearlament fusion names under this. Your Shiren, for example. Getting one of these to the grave is not that important, so this doesn't make any sense. So what you can do here now, you can go for the Elf, as I already said, get the Merly into the grave and then summon the Merly on your opponent's turn. Or what we can do, and let's just do it for the fun, we will go into the Dugaris here, into attack position, activate this. As you can see, there are a lot of different lines that we can use. We will skip our next draw phase, also draw 2, then discard 1. Sure, we will get this back into the grave. Awesome, because that is where we want them to be. And now we discard our halfness. And yeah, this is in the grave. Now we can now activate our planet that we have drawn here, and the planet allows us to add a card in our hand. So now we could, no, we don't have it, we still want this. Now I would go for the Rhino Heart, so we have a play for next turn. Then you could go for your here and this here. You still have the card by the grave, you have the Maxi for the next turn. And you can still, because this is no longer important, go into the Elf, so the Merly is now in the grave, not via card effect, that's important. You could revive something now. In this case, you would revive the Merly, which doesn't make any sense because if you revive it now, you cannot use it in your opponent's turn, so don't do it. But you could use this on your opponent's turn to revive your Merly, and then Merly would mill you 3 cards and allow you more plays. So important to note here that if you fusion summon on your opponent's turn, this will activate to destroy a card on your opponent's field. Note here that the hand we worked with was pretty weak, so this is not the most important or impressive endboard you can end on, but we still have the Mudora engraved, we still have the Kelbeck engraved to interrupt our opponent plays, and as I already said, if we knew we would play against Tearlaments, we would have gone for the Abyss Dweller and not for the Dugaris. I only wanted to show you the other line. Let's look at another test hand. So guys, let's look at our next hand. The problem with the last hand was also that we had really bad mills, but let's see what we can do here. So the hand is not that amazing. I mean, our opponent will not activate something in our main phase, otherwise this would be pretty good. So what we can do here is, of course, we basically have to normal summon the Reinhardt, but what we want to do is activate this Scream, because then we will mill another 3 when we control a Tearlament monster, normal or special summon. We then will normal summon this. We definitely want to do this. This is chaining 1 and this is chaining 2. The reason is that this will get us one of our Tearlament names to the graveyard, and we want this to happen first, so we get another 3 into the graveyard, and then we can, if we get lucky, we don't need to use our Rhino Heart to fuse into our Kit Colors. But let's see what happens. We will mill 3 here. Let's do this first, see what we get here. Mill 3 and we got the, that's unfortunate, we don't want to this to happen, and this will search us a monster to our hand, which is good. This will mill us another 5. So now we can send a name to the grave. Let's start here with the Halfness. Let's send Halfness, and now we can activate. So again, it's important how you layer this here now. So I would start this, you want to happen basically last. So once again, you increase your chances of not having to use your Rhino Heart for the fusion summon. So let's put this here first. This we want to happen last. This is the second, and this then is the third. Once again, we basically need to do this even if our opponents is Tearlaments, because otherwise we do not have any more plays here. So let's see what we mill here. We get something to the hand. We have used our Halfness. Let's get our Shiren, because Shiren would allow us to special summon and get this to grave to mill 5 again. But let's see what happens here. Let's first look at our grave, as I already said, and look what we have milled. We have Kelbeck here. This is pretty good. Unfortunately, we have 2 Kelbecks. What you can do if you have 2 Kelbecks or 2 Mudoras in the grave, you can use one on your turn to shuffle some of your resources back, your Tearlament names. That would be, or maybe in this case we would shuffle back the planet, or maybe even terraforming, because obviously on your opponent's turn you can only use 1, so you don't need 2. So we first go into Kit Colors, and we need to use this, and unfortunately we have not gotten another card, so we need either to use our hand or our field or our hand. So in this case here, I would say, because we have milled with Agido and we still have the Kelbeck, which we can get to grave with the Shiren. Normally I would prefer to use the hand and not the field, but we will use the field here now. Use these two, get to our Kid Colors, because I want this to be active here. Kid Colors here, in this case, once again, of course, you could go for the Merly, and this is what I showed you in the last turn. And then you can basically go for the Mill 8 combo. But let's think about this for a moment. We can also get the trap right here. And you see how this can be complicated. So Merly, of course, we have not used already. We only have used the Halfness. The problem would be if we use or get the trap now and then want to activate this Mill 5 of Kid Colors, then we basically had to either get rid of the trap from the hand or the Shiren, which we can use to fuse, but then we won't get this into the grave. This would be the better line, because then you do not need to Mill 5 for your opponent. So let's imagine that this is also a Tearlament player. Let's get the trap to our hand, and now we want to activate the second effect. So before we wanted to use this, but we will not do this now because this play is safer. We will pick the Kid Colors, and then we will special summon the Shiren. Then we will be able to Mill 5. Of course, we will not get another free, which we would have gotten with Merly, but we basically have changed another free mill for the trap card in the hand, and I think that's worth it. Let's Mill 5, and we have hit Shiren, and once again we have hit the Snow. That's nice. Guido, yeah, okay. So we can now activate the Shiren here, and what you would do now, this is the second play, go for the Rule Colors, use this and the Kid Colors, getting it back to the deck. And chip, this goes here, and now the good thing is that we already have the Shiren on board. So let's see what we can do here. We don't have a normal summon left, we cannot use triple tactics because our opponent is not using anything, and now we can do like the same thing we did last turn. We can extend our plays via the Snow. You will need to check if you can banish enough cards, so you definitely don't want to banish these cards here. So I think we can manage it. We activate the Snow to extend our plays. Snow, really a good card. We can get rid of this, we can get rid of this. This can go, this can go. This can go, and once again we will get rid of this and not our planet and Saliek. I will get rid of Saliek because we have one in the hand, otherwise it's a questionable decision. So yeah, the Snow comes to the field now, and what I will show you now is the Time Thief play. So of course, in a normal game you would have already activated these to get a more advantage, but we will go this now, and now we will continue our play. So we have these two, and we cannot go into the Elf because we don't have a level 2 monster. You could now go, if your opponent is Tearlaments, you could now go into the Abyss Dweller. Always check your graveyard, and if you know that your opponent is Tearlaments, I would now go into the Abyss Dweller because we only have one Keldo in the grave basically. As I already said, we can activate one of our Keldos to get our Agido and maybe the planet back. You could do this, could also not do it because we can only shuffle 2 back. I had to banish a lot. You could go into the defensive option, which doesn't make any sense. You could go into Dugaris, but that is not the thing we want to do here now. Though we could go into Dugaris, then pitch this from the hand and mill another 5. But let me show you the Time Thief play. So we use these for our Time Thief redoer because there's an important thing to understand when it comes to the Time Thief. So what do we have here now? You can see that we can go into Dark. This can be important if your opponent is also Tearlament. We have our special summon negate, we have our Scream, we control a Tearlament monster, so Scream will mill 3 if he normal or special summons. We have the Trap, which we can use. We can put this to the grave, this will summon itself back because of its effect. And we have our Time Thief. Redoer also have the Keldo in the grave. So let's pass over to our opponent just to show you the Time Thief play. He draws a card, we understand by phase, and now you have a few effects here. This is the effect to detach, and this is the effect to take the top card of your opponent's deck and put this as material to him. So do not activate this first. This is also important because now you can scout your opponent's deck. Now I know what he plays. I don't know what this is supposed to be, but you could scout him if you would play a real deck. so to say. But I just want to show you the Time Thief Redoer and how he can start plays on our turn. So activate the Redoer, and then we want to detach the Chiron to the grave. And shoop, this banishes itself, as I already said. And now we have, because this was effect, our Chiron, which we can fusion summon with, or we could fusion summon with right now. So what we have in grave here, the thing is, in this instance, you wouldn't have used it, because as you can see right now here, so don't always use your fusion summons. I only wanted to show you, because what we have happened here is that we can go into Dragastapelia, but we would have used, or we would need to use our rule colors, or we go into kit colors, and we also would need to, or would use our rule colors here, because we only have the Chiron in the grave. So before you make these plays, always check your graveyard, check your opponent's graveyard. But what you could do here, let's just play this through. You could go into your kit colors, which would then give you the possibility to activate the Scream, of course, and activate your Kit Colors effect. Kit Colors will then either search you something to the hand or get something to the grave. Let's just search the Halfness, so we have something to activate on our opponent's turn. We will add this to hand, and then we will mill another 3. We have milled the Halfness, which we can use the fusion effect of. You can then still use the hand and mill 3 effect. So you could then fusion summon here with Halfness, could go again into your rule colors. Doesn't make any sense, but as I already said, you need to check your resources first. So always check your resources, look what you can in theory summon here. As you have seen, this was not like a meaningful play, it doesn't make any sense, but you can do this on your opponent's turn, and then yeah, you can go from here. You can use your Fairy Tale again, for example, to flip something face down. But it's important to know that always check your graveyard, always check the possibilities to fusion summon. I think one of the like beginner mistakes you can make is to always fusion summon and don't think about what you are doing there. But this was the hand, and let's look at the next example.
So guys, let's look at another hand, and this one is quite good. We have different lines here. We can start with the Scream, normal summon the Rhino Heart for milling and for the guaranteed fusion play. We can also do the Keldo Kelbeck play, in which we special summon the Keldo and drop the Kelbeck to grave. Then we would still have the normal summon play here, and we would have 2 level 4 bodies on the field. So what you could do right now here in the beginning is you could do the normal summon Reinhardt play, then do the Keldo play, and then you would have had 2 level 4 bodies on the field, and then you could go into Abyss Dweller. So once again, think about what your matchup is. Most of you guys are playing Tearlaments, or you're not playing against Tearlaments that much. So let's just start with the Keldo play to drop the Kelbeck into the grave. And as I already said, as we have another play here, a safer play, this is basically what you would do in a real game, especially if you think you are playing against Tearlaments. This is more of a backup play. Of course, you would do this play that we are doing right now if you do not have any other plays. So we have this in grave and we have this on the field. I think we definitely want the Mudora to our hand because we want to set up our grave. Let's activate this. Don't activate this, and let's see what we got here. We have the Merly. Let's check our grave. We have Merly, and then we would need one of our Tearlament names from the hand to go into our Kit Kalos. That is quite fine. We are going into Kit using this, and so we could use our Rhino Heart here because I'm intending to use this for my normal summon to get it into grave. So let's use the Rhino Heart here. So we have the Halfness for next turn then. Go into the Kit. And then we can also search the trap. Obviously, mistake of mine, this would have been played before, but let's play it now. And now we can, I mean, we don't have to. You can normal summon the Mudora here and basically go into Abyss Dweller if you want to. But as we are now using our own Kit Colors to mill 5, we do not need the Abyss Dweller now. But let's just pretend we want to safeten up our further plays because of that. Now we have milled the second Miller and a fusion summon, by the way. And of course, you could now, like, in this case, if this was a real game and you are playing against Tearlaments, I would not use this, make the Abyss Dweller here, because then we can mill again 5 with Kid Kalos and maybe hit another Agido and then activate it more safely. So in this case here, what we can do now is, because we have hit another miller, we can use the Fusion Summon to go into Rule Colors, because now we do not need the Kid effect, and then we need, or we use our miller. It makes sense to always, if you have Fusion Summons in your grave and your miller, use the miller last, or let it resolve last, so you have more fusion material in the grave. In this case, it doesn't matter, because we will go into our Rule Colors, but just for future plays. And as I already said, always check your graveyard. We have a shuffle back here, and of course we have the Modora shuffle back. So now we can go into Rule Colors, as we do not need our Kid Colors mill 5 now. I mean, we could have used it, but we are hitting the point that we have basically used every fusion name. So once again, there are a few different ways you could go about this. This does not make really sense. We could still now use our last fusion if we use the Dugares and we pitch the Halfness, because if I am remembering correctly, and I would advise you to always look for that, I think we have used the Shiren and the Merly to fusion summon, but not our Halfness. So what we could do now is play this. We can draw two more cards, and then we can fusion summon with our Halfness. We have the Crow engrave, so what we could go for with the Halfness is the Mud Dragon of the Swarm to protect our Rule Colors, for example. Let's see our grave. We do not have the Diviner, and we don't have a Merly, so going into the Sprite Elf is not that important here. Let's just go for the Dugares line and pretend that we do not play against Tearlaments here. The other good thing is, with the Dugares line, we are getting both our Shufflers back into the grave. We draw 2 cards, and we can pitch our Merly to fusion summon. No, we don't want to chain, and we can now pitch the Halfness, activate the Halfness to at least, or now we can also go into, exactly, we could go into Kaleido Heart, but of course we would need to use our Rule Colors for that. We could go into another kit, but doesn't make a lot of sense. You could go into Ragastepelia, but you would need to use your Rule Colors. The thing you can go into is the Mud Dragon, because you can use these cards here. And yes, now the Mud Dragon protects our Aqua monsters from targeting. That's quite nice. You can also change the type, and of course, if you would happen to have another level 4 monster, you can then go into further plays. We put our Saliak here, and we have set up our graveyard for interrupting our opponent. So we have both Shufflers in our graveyard, and we have a backup Shuffler, though optimally you would want to have 4 Shufflers in grave, because now with 1 Shuffler of our enemy he could shuffle back all our Shufflers. If we had 4 Shufflers in the grave, 1 would be left. So this is always something you need to consider. Look at your grave, look at whether you have Shufflers or you have no Shufflers, and this also determines whether you need to go into your Abyss Dweller. So you could have gone for the Dugares play because you have 2 Shufflers in grave that protect you. Could have also gone into the Abyss Dweller play, but this is our endboard now. We have this negate, we have this protection, which can also change theoretically to fire, but you don't want to do that. We have the Scream to activate the place on our turn, and we have the Saliak, which is also able to get our Rule Colors into the grave. And this can just summon back. Then we have a lot of interruptions here on the field. Yeah, so let's look at one last hand. So for our last hand, we once again have quite a good one. We have the Shiren and the Keldo to drop something into the grave. Once again, there is a safe play and there is a risky play. The risky play would obviously using the Keldo, pitching the Agido into grave and then mill 5. The safe play would to use the Reinhardt as a normal summon, or to use the Shiren special summon. You could also just Shiren and get this into grave, of course. Both of these plays are possible. This would then mill another 3, so this is basically mill 8, but only 5 for your opponent. Let's just for the fun, you could also use Shiren and pitch the Reinhardt into the grave. That would also be a possibility. Let's use the Shiren here, And let's pitch the Yagido and mill 5. And yeah, let's see what we have hit. We have hit another. Oh no, we still need to mill. Sorry, this was of our Murdy, of course. So we have the Saliak for getting a monster, and we have the 2 millers. So let's just for fun use them both and see what we can do from there. Also, we will get another Tearlament name into the hand. Let's just grab our Harvenies and let's see what we have hit here. Also, always check the grave. Unfortunately, we have milled the planet. We have both shufflebacks into the grave. That's really awesome. And now you have to think about what you want to activate. You basically can activate everything, but most of the time you cannot use everything. So we definitely want a fusion summon for Kid Colors. We can use 1 fusion summon for Kid. That makes sense. Let's just use the Shiren here. Let's use the Murley. So this is going to be Kid. And then we could go for a second fusion summon. Yeah, let me think about this for a moment. We could go into our Kaleido Heart, which makes more sense if it's our second turn or if we have the planet. Okay. I think I want to go for the Rhino Heart, but not activate the other 2 fusions, as I want to activate Kid Colors effect before I want to fuse Kid Colors into Rule Colors. So I do not want to activate these now, do not want to activate these. So let's resolve this. We summon the Rhino Heart to have a body on the field. Rhino Heart will now, what are we using here to fusion summon? Let's just check again. What have I selected? It's so tough. You always have to check. Oh, the Murdy. Okay. So what we could do right here, we pitching the Harvest to the graveyard. Now we fusion summon for our Kid Colors. Using obviously the stuff from the grave. Let's get one of the Harvest back. Go into the Kid Colors, and as we already have milled a lot here, we can do the following play. We can use the Kid Colors effect here, chaining 1. Then we can chain block this from Harvest from our opponent from the hand, because this is the on-field effect. And then we can basically fusion summon the Kid away. We will still get the Surge. And now we could think about using the Rhino Heart as well. Let's check our grave again for fusion materials. So we cannot go into the Mud Dragon because we do not have the DD Crow in the grave. We will fusion summon this into Rule Colors, and we could then, because we're using Harvest now and we have used Murley. Okay, so it doesn't make any sense to do it right now here because both Sharons are here, as you can see. Here's one, here's the other one. So we cannot pitch a Sharon, otherwise we could have done the third fusion play. So let's just resolve it like this. This will fusion summon into Rule Colors using the Harvest and our Kid Colors. The reason why I'm doing this right here is normally you want the Kid Colors mill 5 play, but we already have milled quite a lot, and there's basically only 1 tier fusion name left. We also have our shufflers in the graveyard already, so we basically don't need more milling in this turn. So now you could decide to either use your Scream or use your Saliak. I think the Saliak is the better play here, because the Saliak also, if we negate something, we need to send something, so we could send Shiren to have a fusion summon on our turn. That is possible, and what we can do or could do here is get more bodies into play. As you can see, we still have a special summon, we still have a normal summon, so what you could do right here, we can pitch the Agido into the grave. Obviously this doesn't activate because we already used it, can get another one to the hand. In this case I would go for the Mudora, but that's arguable. And now what we can do here, let's think about this for a second. We want to use this for the Time Thief Redoer, so we can have plays on our opponent's turn. Let's do it like this. We now can go into 2 of our level 4 plays. We will use these two for our Abyss Dweller. Positioning in this moment is not that important, because we will not go into the Sprite Elf here, as we do not have a Merly engrave or the Diviner. And now we can go Time Thief, Redoer, and use both of these here. And yeah, now we have our Time Thief for play on the next turn. Let's just pretend we want to like make further plays. You could use obviously Abyss Dweller every time in your turn to also get your shufflers back into the grave. At this moment you would not do it because our plays are finished here, of course, so definitely think about when you want to use it. And now we can pass over to our opponent. Let's imagine he's also a tier player, so you could in this case play around Infinite Impermanence by not using Abyss Dweller here, but using it when your opponent has played a card, because in the moment he played a card, or he plays a card, he can no longer activate the Infinite Impermanence from hand. So that's what you would do here, but let's just pretend we are not interested in that. So now the Abyss Dweller is active. Now we can again use in a moment the effect of the Time Thief Redo and the standby phase, just to scout out our opponent, get a card. And now, for example, he plays Terraforming. This, by the way, is what I'm talking about. And you could now activate your Abyss Dweller, and he could not imperm you. So what you could do now here is activate your Time Thief Redoer. Obviously, you in an optimal world would activate this after you would have activated your Rule Colors effect. So then you could fuse it away, and it would make sense. So let's just get the Shiren into the grave, and as you can see here now, he will get a search. As you can see here now, we have our fusion play right now to activate something, and we could go into Kaleido Heart now using these two and this here. Obviously, as I already said, going into Kaleido Heart here makes more sense if your opponent has a card that you can spin back. You would not just fusion summon Kaleido Heart because of nothing. But this is, for example, a play that you could go in now, and what you can then do also. Let's just see if we can make this happen here. Yeah, we can activate this now. What I want to show you is what you can do with Kaleido Heart. A second. He activates this. Yeah, yes, sure. Just add something. I just want to negate something. Let's see if he gives us the opportunity. So you could use Rule Colors obviously to stop this special summon, and then also send one Tearlament card from hand to grave. We can do this now because I can show you what I wanted to show you with the Rule Colors as well. We don't need the Saliak for this, so we negate this, also destroy it, and now we have to pay the cost. We can pay the cost with Kaleido Heart. And because of Kaleido Heart's effect, this will then come back to the field, and now it will trigger its effect. We can send a card to the graveyard, as you can also do with Rhino Heart. I'm blanking. Oh, we have used Shiren, so you could go Halfness, and you can now fusion summon again, and also use this effect. Let's just pretend we are doing this, and we also use the return to deck effect. So you can pop your Kaleido Heart after you have used the effect on your opponent's turn. This is quite valuable. You could also have done it with the Saliak. This is what I wanted to do originally, and just imagine, okay, we have used the Rule Colors, and now we can basically go into Dragostapelia, because Rule Colors effect is used, and Dragostapelia would now be able to interrupt the opponent again. And of course, there are more interruptions. We have the Snow, we have the Shufflers, and this is not a Tearlament opponent, but if it would be a Tearlament opponent, he cannot use a graveyard, and we have basically negated all his plays. We still have this negation, which you could then pitch the Kaleido Heart with. Could also have waited and pitched the Kaleido Heart in the beginning with this. This also would have activated this. And I hope I could show you what you can do with the Tearlament hands. If you want to see more gameplay, like live gameplay against other Tearlament decks, then I have linked a video in the info box where you can check out about 1 hour and 20 long a gameplay video where I had a 11k win streak going straight to Diamond 5. Now I am at Diamond 3, so the climb is really easy. I hope you enjoyed the video, hope you learned something. If you liked it, then give me a thumbs up and consider to subscribe. This helps me out a lot. And thanks for being here, and we will see each other in the next one.